The case today took place in Xi'an, the capital of Shanxi Province, China. On March 9, 2013, Ms. Xia, who lived in the Baihua Lin apartment complex in Xi'an, called the building's management staff. She was worried because she hadn't been able to reach her female tenant for a week, couldn't collect the rent, and the tenant's phone was unreachable. The apartment had become unusually quiet. With no other option, the management staff had to break the lock and enter the apartment with Ms. Xia. As soon as they entered, Ms. Xia's worst fears were confirmed. In the bedroom, they found a young woman lying motionless on the bed. Ms. Xia immediately called the police. Upon receiving the report of a murder, the criminal police from the Weixiang district in Xi'an quickly arrived at the scene. The Baihua Lin apartment complex was a newly built resettlement area. The apartment where the murder occurred was approximately 645 square feet. On the bed in the bedroom, the police found the body of a young woman, her 2 feet awkwardly sticking out from the blanket. An on-site investigation revealed bloodstains on the bedsheet near her feet. The victim was lying on her back. The living room was empty, with only a sofa and coffee table. The bedroom, however, was very messy, with signs of a ransacked wardrobe and clothes scattered on the floor. The victim was lying on the bed, naked. The police found no wallet, phone, computer, or any other valuables in the apartment. Based on the scene, the police initially suspected this could be a robbery murder case where the victim was assaulted and then killed. The victim's face had been taped, and the cause of death was asphyxiation. Her hands were tied behind her back. The victim was approximately 5 feet 5 inches tall and around 20 years old. Ms. Xia noted that these characteristics closely matched those of her tenant. She was about 20 years old, around 5 feet 5 inches to 5 feet 6 inches, a little bit plump with a round face. However, since the victim's face had been disfigured, Ms. Xia could not be certain that it was her tenant. According to Ms. Xia, 3 months earlier, a young woman had rented the apartment after responding to an advertisement. The rental agreement was set at 900 RMB 130 USD per month. The woman rented the apartment for a year and paid 3 months' rent in advance. The two parties also signed a lease agreement, which listed the tenant's name as He Man Man, along with her contact number. Ms. Xia mentioned that the woman said she had come to Xi'an to find her husband. When asked what her husband did for a living, she replied that he worked in debt collection, a sensitive profession primarily associated with organized crime. Ms. Xia also asked for her ID, which she photocopied. Using the photocopy of Man Man's ID, the police in Shanxi Province quickly contacted the police in Anhui Province. According to information from the Anhui police, Man Man was born in 1990 and came from a rural area in Anhui. After graduating from junior high school, she left home to work, and only a few months prior had moved to Xi'an. To confirm the victim's identity, the police notified Man Man's parents, who rushed from their hometown to Xi'an. The on-site investigation also revealed several important clues. In the living room trash bin, the police found 2 cigarette butts, which were likely left by the perpetrator. Both the bedroom and living room had desk calendars, and both were turned to January 2013. Additionally, in the bedroom, the police found several shopping receipts from a supermarket, with the last one dated January 9th. Notably, the police also found a photo appointment slip from a photo studio, with the scheduled photo shoot for January 10th. However, the photo had not yet been picked up. This suggests that the victim may have been murdered 2 months prior, before the police received the report on March 9th, 2013. There was mold on the tape on the victim's face. Combined with the room temperature and other factors, the estimated time of death was at least a month earlier. Initially, due to the condition of the body, there were varying opinions on the exact time of death. However, the police initially concluded that the victim had been dead for more than a month. Since the apartment was on a high floor and the weather was cold, the body hadn't decomposed, and the fact that it was a newly built apartment without a heating system unintentionally helped preserve the body in the cold winter. The results of the forensic examination also ruled out the possibility that the victim had died within the last month, and it was even likely to have been longer. Based on the fact that Man Man hadn't picked up the photo since January 10th, the police deduced that the murder occurred on either January 9th or 10th. The police quickly went to the photo studio to retrieve the photo, and the woman in the picture was identified as Man. Through the autopsy, it was confirmed that the victim was female and had a notably good height. The autopsy also revealed that the victim had undergone facial plastic surgery and breast augmentation about 2 to 3 years prior. The DNA analysis from the cigarette butts found at the scene confirmed that they belonged to the victim, indicating that the victim was a smoker. Based on these characteristics, the police speculated that the victim might have worked in a special industry, such as prostitution. The police investigated Man's ID number and discovered that from November to early December 2012, she had frequently rented rooms at hotels in Xi'an. This further supported the police's theory that the victim might have been working as a prostitute. By this time, Man's parents had arrived in Xi'an. After a DNA test, it was confirmed that the victim was indeed Man. Her parents said that Man often went away for work, and they were unsure of the exact nature of her job. In early January 2013, they had asked for a photo of their daughter for matchmaking purposes, which is why Man had gone to the photo studio. Since her parents were not familiar with Man's social connections, they could not provide any useful information to aid the investigation. The police continued focusing on the crime scene. In the corner of the nightstand in the bedroom, a fallen alarm clock caught the police's attention. The back cover and battery of the clock were detached, suggesting that it had fallen during a struggle. The time on the clock had stopped at 3:14, which was likely the time when the incident occurred. However, the police couldn't determine if this was 3:14 a.m. or 3:14 p.m. So, if there had been a struggle, did any neighbors hear anything? A neighbor living next door to the victim stated that he had only met her once and did not know what she did for a living. He also mentioned that he had never seen any man come in or out of her apartment, nor had he heard any strange noises during that time. Since the apartment complex was newly completed, very few people had moved in, and the other neighbors had no useful information. Considering the victim's possible occupation, the police did not rule out the possibility that she had used the rented apartment to entertain clients. If that were the case, there should have been some trace left in the building. The police visited the management office of the apartment complex to search for surveillance footage, but they were informed that at the time of the incident, the security cameras had not yet been installed. Due to the small number of staff, no one had noticed anything suspicious. The police also did not exclude the possibility that Man might have worked in other locations. They began showing photos of the victim and investigating entertainment venues, hotels, and massage parlors across the city. Meanwhile, the crime scene investigation was still ongoing. In the bathroom, investigators made an unexpected discovery. In a trash bag, the police found a used condom tied in a knot. Behind the bathroom door, they also found another used condom. Inside this condom, they discovered male semen. Could the semen found in the condom and the semen found on the bed belong to the same man? The police sent both samples for testing to compare. The results confirmed that the semen found in the condom and on the bed came from the same man. This discovery was a major breakthrough for the investigators, providing crucial evidence in the case. At this point, an investigator who was checking the items on the nightstand in the bedroom unexpectedly found a handwritten note on the back of a calendar page. It contained a phone number and an address. Using the address and phone number from the note, the police quickly identified the individual as Zhang, born in 1981 in Xi'an. He worked for a company, was married, and had children. Zhang was quickly identified as the prime suspect. The police began investigating Zhang's connections, trying to determine if there was any link between him and the victim, Man. Zhang worked in an office and drove a silver car worth approximately 100,000 RMB. After getting married, he lived with his wife, children, mother, and sister in the same house. The police secretly surveilled and investigated Zhang without him noticing. Through the surveillance, the police observed that Zhang led a very simple lifestyle, only traveling between home, his son's kindergarten, and his office. The police decided to summon Zhang for questioning. The first thing the police did was ask Zhang to identify a photo of Man. Zhang confirmed that the woman in the photo was named Man, and she was a close friend of his. He had not been in contact with her for over 2 months. The last time they communicated was in early January, when she called him to meet up. Upon hearing the news of Man-Man's death, Gang appeared extremely shocked. He recounted to the police how they had met. One evening in December 2012, around 8 p.m., while driving, Gang encountered a young woman standing on the side of the road with a suitcase. She asked for a ride to the airport for 300 RMB. Since Gang's income was not high, and he thought he could earn a decent amount by picking up this passenger, he agreed to the ride. Before getting out of the car, the woman handed Gang her phone number and mentioned that she was in the clothing business and had come here to expand her market. She said that whenever she had free time, she would invite him to dinner. A few days later, Man took the initiative to contact Gang, inviting him out to dinner, explaining that she was new to the area and wanted to meet more people. She also said directly that she was looking for a boyfriend. At this point, Gang thought that getting to know a young, beautiful, dynamic, and open-minded woman like Man would not be a bad thing. Furthermore, Man quickly expressed interest in him, which gave him a refreshing feeling, quite different from being with his wife. Gang did not reject this unexpected romantic interest. He even bought her a bouquet of roses to express his feelings. Over time, their relationship developed, and Gang occasionally visited Man-Man's place to date. So whose semen was found on the victim and in the condom? DNA tests confirmed that it was Gang's. Gang admitted that he had slept with Man on the afternoon of January 9th and left at around 3 p.m., which coincided with the time the alarm clock had stopped. Gang stated, after having sex with Man on the afternoon of January 9th, 2013, he drove away from the Bai Hua Lin apartment complex and then lost contact with her. Since the Lunar New Year was approaching, he assumed that Man had gone back to her hometown, and he didn't think much of their brief romance. In fact, he felt quite relieved. Including the ride to the airport, he had given Man a total of 5,000 RMB. Although he admitted to having had sex with Man on January 9th, Gang firmly maintained that he was not the murderer. However, in Gang's car, the police found a roll of tape and a piece of white nylon cord identical to the evidence recovered at the crime scene. Gang claimed that these items were purchased by Man at her request because there were no stores near her place and she had left them in his car. He said these items had been in his car for several months. The evidence recovered at the crime scene indicated that Duan Gang was connected to the death of Man. However, Gang continued to insist that while he had been involved with Man, he was definitely not the murderer. So, was Gang the killer, or is there another suspect? The police needed to gather more evidence from the crime scene. The investigation is still proceeding carefully, with every brick and wall being thoroughly examined by the authorities. After a full day and night of examination, the police discovered something strange. It turned out that after thoroughly checking the crime scene, they found no fingerprints or footprints, and even the victim's traces were not clearly present. The scene had been meticulously cleaned. This murder, which involved robbery and rape, presented a very unusual situation. On the one hand, there were no important traces of evidence, while on the other hand, the few pieces of evidence found were highly abnormal. For example, there was semen on the bedsheet near the victim's legs, 2 used condoms, and 1 condom tied in a knot. This was suspicious. Why would the killer leave semen behind? This was highly unusual. If it was a rape, why would the perpetrator use a condom and even leave behind semen? The second anomaly was the alarm clock, which was turned upside down on the bedroom floor. The battery and the back cover of the clock had been detached and were scattered in different places. If the clock had fallen from the nightstand, the parts should have been scattered across the floor, not thrown so far apart. Some pieces ended up in a drawer, while others were thrown upstairs, which didn't match the actual situation of the fallen objects. These anomalies led the investigators to change their approach to the case. It was very likely that the crime scene had been staged. This indicated that the killer was trying to mislead the police. The police explained that most suspects, after committing a crime, would clean up the scene in an attempt to avoid capture. However, the cleaning at this crime scene exposed several flaws, particularly the alarm clock on the floor and the phone number written on a calendar page, which seemed to have been intentionally left to allow the police to identify the suspect. So, what was the purpose of this elaborate staging? Where was the killer trying to lead the investigation? What was the motive behind the murder? The police decided to take advantage of stillness to control movement. At that time, they intentionally leaked information about the case to the public because they didn't know where the mastermind was or who might be watching them. The evidence collected from the crime scene showed that a suspect who had cleaned the scene would not have left so much incriminating evidence behind. This suggested that Zhang might be telling the truth, and he was not the killer. Based on the existing evidence, the leadership of the Xi'an police held several meetings to analyze the case. From the scene, it appeared that the bedsheet was quite smooth. If a struggle, or even a rape, had occurred on the bed, the sheet wouldn't have been so flat. Moreover, there were no signs of scratches or injuries on the victim's inner thighs or other body parts, and the victim's head showed no signs of trauma. The forensic examiner concluded that this was a case of rape after the victim had already died. After discussion, the police reached a consensus. The killer was male and possibly knew the victim. Since the victim was young and healthy with the ability to resist, and because there were no signs of a struggle at the scene, it was likely that Man had been strangled to death first, then bound with her arms behind her back, with her head wrapped in tape. Given the sophistication of the staged scene, the police suspected the killer had experience dealing with investigations and could possibly have a criminal record. Therefore, the victim's social relationships became a key element in solving the case. After 3 days of tirelessly following the trail, a massage parlor employee finally recognized the victim. A few months before the incident, Man had worked at this massage parlor. According to a colleague, Man worked there for a short time before quitting. Someone had driven up in a black Audi Q7 to pick her up, and the person seemed very wealthy. The colleague mentioned that the Audi Q7 was new, very eye-catching since the model had just been released, making it expensive and uncommon, which left a deep impression on them. So, what is the connection between the man driving the black Audi Q7 and Man? The police discovered that Zhang, the man whose name appeared on the calendar, was the only person connected to Man found at the crime scene. He drove a silver car worth around $14,000, 100,000 RMB, daily. Investigations also revealed that he had never driven the black Audi Q7. Thus, the man driving the black Audi Q7 became a prime suspect and the second person of interest in the case. The police quickly compiled a list of people who had purchased an Audi Q7 in the area over the past 6 months. They also worked with the local traffic management agency to retrieve information about black Audi Q7s that had been registered locally. After filtering through the data, only about 20 cars matched the criteria. Using traffic surveillance cameras, the police tracked the movements of these 20 vehicles. One car stood out to the police because it was frequently seen near Zhang's house. A local restaurant owner near Zhang's house said that, over the past few months, a man had been regularly driving a black Audi Q7 to the restaurant, sometimes alone, sometimes with a young woman. After the restaurant owner identified the man, it was confirmed that he was not Zhang. The police then identified the owner of the vehicle as Zhang, who had purchased the car in October 2012. Chang is a wealthy and influential businessman. The police conducted a background check on Zhang and uncovered an important piece of information. He had a criminal record and had previously worked with law enforcement. This aligned with initial suspicions about the suspect. Zhang, born in 1973 in Xi'an, had worked for a state-owned enterprise after graduating high school. In 1994, he was convicted of 9 years in prison for theft and embezzlement. After his release, Zhang started a business in electromechanical equipment. In recent years, his business has thrived, with his personal income reaching hundreds of millions of RMB. With Zhang identified as a key suspect, the police began investigating his connections. Meanwhile, they also found another lead on Man. On January 7th, 2013, 2 months before the crime, she had reported a stolen wallet and ID card to the police. At that time, she had provided her bank account details. The police then investigated the account and discovered that between December 2012 and early January 2013, over 6,000 US dollars, 40,000 RMB, had been deposited into the account. At the same time, investigators unexpectedly received an important piece of information from one of Chang's employees. It turned out that the owner of the Audi was actually the boyfriend of Zhang's sister. A surprising twist revealed that Zhang's secretary, Duan Li, was none other than Gang's sister. This discovery shocked the police, as Duan Li was the link between the two men, Gang and Zhang, who seemed to have no connection at all. She likely knew some information about the case, so the police summoned Duan Li for questioning. Duan Li graduated from university with a degree in foreign languages and had been working at Zhang's company for 2 years. A year ago, her boss, Zhang, began pursuing her, telling her that his wife had passed away. Duan Li, who had been orphaned at a young age, was deeply moved by Zhang's concern, especially since he was more than 10 years older, successful, and financially secure. Zhang's care for her was often more attentive than that of family members. During a business trip, the two stayed in the same hotel room. Later, to show his sincerity, Zhang bought an apartment in Duan Li's name worth 400,000 RMB, approximately 55,000 US dollars. Zhang's sincerity touched Duan Li, and she decided to be with him. However, their relationship was strongly opposed by Duan Li's family. Gang, her older brother, expressed that their family valued character over wealth, and they could not accept a young woman marrying a man much older, especially someone who had been married before. Gang, who had acted as a father figure for Duan Li, demanded that she quit her job at Zhang's company. Despite quitting, Duan Li and Zhang secretly rekindled their relationship, which upset her mother and brother, even leading to a physical altercation. The police noticed that Chang and Gang were not friends, but had a personal conflict. In other words, Zhang harbored resentment toward Gang due to his opposition to the romance. But what did this have to do with He-Man-Man's death, and who was the real killer? At this point, the police identified Zhang as a dangerous suspect and began secretly monitoring him. They discovered that Zhang had been acting strangely recently, with his black Audi Q7 frequently appearing near Gang's house. According to Duan Li, Zhang had asked her several times if her brother had returned home or if anyone from the police had come looking for him. Zhang's particular interest in Gang led the police to suspect that he might know the truth about the case and possibly be the mastermind behind it. Realizing the time had come, after 7 days of investigation on March 14, 2013, the police decided to take Zhang in for questioning. Zhang adamantly denied knowing the victim and emphasized that his life was going well, with no reason to do anything wrong. When the police mentioned Gang, Zhang said, "It's normal for my girlfriend's family to oppose our relationship." When asked about Zhang, Gang replied, "I've never met him. I only know about this man through my sister and mother. My mother doesn't think he is sincere." The interrogations of the two individuals had not yielded any significant results. It seemed that both were involved in the case, but who the actual killer was remained a mystery. The incident where Gang assaulted his sister took place in October 2012, which only proved that there was a personal conflict between Zhang and Gang. But how this related to Man's death was still unclear. The police had yet to find an answer. In order to uncover the truth, the only option left was to wait for Zhang to confess. However, Zhang continued to remain silent, denying all accusations and firmly refusing to cooperate with the investigation. The police knew that in order to get the culprit to confess, they needed solid evidence. They decided to search Zhang's company, and as expected, they made a breakthrough. They found a phone in Zhang's office. The phone contained a long history of conversations between Zhang and the victim, Man. Therefore, Zhang's claim that he did not know the victim was clearly a lie. Faced with undeniable evidence, Zhang had no choice but to admit he knew Man. He confessed to the entire murder plan, staging the scene and framing someone else. It turned out that although Zhang had never met Man, he had long harbored resentment toward Gang for obstructing his relationship with Duan Li. The incident where Duan Li was beaten by her brother became the tipping point, triggering Zhang's desire for revenge. Man became the scapegoat in his dark plot. One evening at the end of November 2012, Zhang met Man, who claimed to be a service worker. Upon learning that she had only recently arrived in Xi'an, Zhang proposed that she help him with a task. According to Zhang's plan, in order to set up a situation involving Duan Gang, he needed an accomplice, and Man was the perfect candidate. He assigned her the task of approaching and seducing Gang's clients, using a phone to record evidence. Once she completed the task, she would be paid 150,000 RMB, about 21,000 USD, with an upfront payment of 30,000 RMB. The condition was that Man would have to sever all contact with other men. Tempted by the generous offer, Man agreed, and the client Zhang wanted her to target was none other than Gang. To make the setup more convincing, Zhang arranged for Man to rent an apartment, which he did from Mrs. Xia. Initially, Man used a tactic of slashing Gang's car tires to get closer to him. Gang recalled that, in early December, his car had been slashed twice. Someone even left a note on his car, claiming responsibility for the damage and offering to compensate him. However, when Gang called the number on the note, he discovered that the number was no longer in service. Seeing that the plan had not yet succeeded, Zhang continued to direct Man to trap Gang, and the scenario where Gang coincidentally helped someone by offering a ride to the airport for extra income unfolded. From that point on, all of Man's actions followed Zhang's instructions through text messages. On January 9th, 2013, Zhang directed Man to invite Gang to her home to chat. After they had sex, she left a condom and other fake evidence behind. Man thought to herself that Zhang wanted to take revenge on Gang, and she was just the one who benefited from the situation. The 40,000 RMB in her bank account had all been transferred by Zhang. Man believed that if Zhang said something, he would follow through, and all she had to do was follow the instructions. She never imagined that the actual outcome would be completely beyond her control. Around 3:30 p.m. on January 9th, 2013, after having sex with Gang, Man stayed at her house waiting as instructed, but this time, the one who came to her was death. According to Zhang's testimony, after arriving at Man's apartment, he claimed that, due to being blackmailed by her, he accidentally strangled her to death. He then intentionally staged the scene to frame Gang. The police analyzed that Zhang and Man only had a transactional relationship, and the reason for her death over 5,000 RMB was unconvincing. At this point, the police still had some unanswered questions, such as why the tape and nylon rope found in Duan Gang's car matched exactly with the evidence at the crime scene. It turned out that Chang had instructed Man to ask Gang to buy the tape and nylon rope. Man complied, kept a portion, and left the rest in Gang's car. Little did she know, it was the very tape and nylon rope that would take her life. The alarm clock, which stopped at 3:15 p.m. at the crime scene, was also part of Zhang's plan to stage the time of the murder. After committing the crime, he deliberately left fake evidence at the scene to direct suspicion toward Gang. He knew that the police worked based on evidence, but he didn't expect that, after collecting the evidence, they would also analyze its authenticity. It wasn't until the police found Duan Li that she realized the man she had deeply loved was the murderer who staged the scene to frame her own family. Through investigating Zhang's relationships, the police discovered that he was married with children, and besides Duan Li, he had been seeing several other women. The house purchase was just a trick to deceive women. During her relationship with Zhang, Duan Li also felt his domineering, selfish, and excessive need to control others. She said he once told her, "You're mine. Your family once introduced you to someone else, but I won't allow you to meet that person." Duan Li confirmed that her brother had never met Zhang, and Zhang had only accidentally seen her brother a few times. After learning the truth, Duan Li felt deeply regretful and realized how tragically she had been deceived. Zhang, just because his love life was obstructed, killed an innocent person and staged the scene to blame others. His motive for the crime was truly incomprehensible. After investigating Zhang's background and the process of his crime, the police analyzed his criminal psychology. He had achieved early success in his career, which led to a sense of arrogance and self-importance. He believed that after silencing the victim, he could easily cover his tracks, and that the police would never find the evidence. Throughout the entire crime, he displayed a sense of superiority, selfishness, callousness, coldness, and cruelty. Zhang, motivated only by his duty as a brother to protect his sister, almost found himself caught up in legal trouble. As for Man, a 22-year-old girl, she sacrificed her life for money. The moment she agreed to cooperate with Chang, she stepped into the door of death. Duan Li shared that after this great upheaval, she had matured significantly and her relationship with her brother had healed. Duan Gang mentioned that every time he passed the street where he had met Man, a deep sense of regret would rise within him. Her death was truly tragic. This incident had caused much trouble for his family. Although everything had passed, it would serve as a valuable lesson for him throughout his life. From now on, he would live a calmer and more orderly life. For the police, this was a successful case. The perpetrator had been caught, and no one had been wrongfully convicted. However, the case also left behind many lessons to reflect upon. The story concludes as a reminder to everyone about the temptations of money, the insatiable greed, and the cruelty of human nature. More importantly, it serves as a message to all. Live responsibly for yourself and the community. Always obey the law and uphold ethical standards because true happiness comes only from doing good. That concludes today's video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.